This is locally sourced spirituality, and I called this one Sitting at the Feet of a Master. This past weekend, this current weekend is Labor Day weekend, and last weekend I had an amazing time. My son and I, woke up early Friday morning and made the 500-mile journey from Lansing, where we live, to the Porcupine Mountains in the western Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so we went to the state park, the Porcupine Wilderness State Park, and we planned a 25-mile hike through those mountains. Now, if you're saying I didn't know there were mountains in Michigan, you're right. There are none except for the Porkies. They're not huge mountains, and if you're from Colorado, you would probably just call them foothills. But they are our mountains, and we love them. It is beautiful countryside, and so my son and I went there with the purpose of, I guess, testing our skills and testing what we know, so that my son can be sure about a decision that he wants to make, that he's going to make about next summer, about doing an internship where he would be asked to be out in the bush for several days at a time doing scientific research. So this was sort of a test run for that, and we had just a great time. We showed up, finally got to the mountains, to the Scenic Outlook parking lot at Lake of the Clouds, and that's where the trailhead began for the Big Carp River. And so we packed up our gear for our 3-day, 2-night adventure. And so we headed down the Big Carp River along the ridge line along the Outlook. We saw some great views. We took some pictures. We were walking along, and we walked and walked, and we followed the trail for about 5 miles. That's when the trail crossed a river, an unbridged river crossing, and it wasn't that big of a deal. It was about calf height river water. So we just took off our boots and socks and rolled up our pant legs and waded across and set our stuff down, and then we filtered some of that cold river water for our water bladders, and just probably 100 yards from that site up the hill was a designated area for camping. There was a fire ring there, so we went ahead and made camp right there, and we boiled some water and dumped it into our freeze-dried food packs, and we had dinner, and we chatted for a while, and then the sun went down, and we decided to turn in, and we crammed into our little 2-man tent, and we slept, and it was, well, I have to say it was terrible sleeping, but because it was, I'm used to my memory foam mattress, and now I was on a tent floor without much room to move, and unfortunately, the sleeping bag that I was using had previously been used by one of my little sons, who apparently had wet his pants inside the sleeping bag, and it didn't get washed. So I had that interesting smell all weekend in the tent. Anyway, that was just a minor inconvenience, not pleasant, but if you're a parent, you are not unfamiliar with that scent. Well, the morning we got up, we made breakfast, same kind of way. We, rehydrated some freeze-dried food and ate it. It was delicious because that's what we had. Broke camp, and we headed out on the trail again, and then we made our way down to the end of the trail, where the Big Carp River dumps into Lake Superior. There's a Lake Superior trail, so we connected with the Lake Superior trail and headed up that along the way. And just along the way, I'm breezing past just some really wonderful things that we saw. There's, waterfalls and great people and just a variety of different kinds of forest. And we pressed on up along the Lake Superior trail, and it got to be about 1:00 in the afternoon. So we stopped along the trail, this narrow little trail, no real place to go because there's a lot of undergrowth and foliage. And so we just stopped there and boiled some more water on our little camp stove and put it into another pack of freeze-dried food and had our lunch right there. And then we noticed it was starting to mist and sprinkle a little, but that's all right because that's just part of the experience. We packed up and headed out, and we were pressing toward a campsite that was near Lone Rock. Lone Rock is a chunk of rock out in Lake Superior just offshore, and just on the shoreline where Lone Rock is another designated campsite, and so we went there. And when we got there was a couple of older fellows having their lunch right there, and they asked us where we're going, and I said, well, this is where we're headed, and they're like, well, we're leaving. They just stopped there for lunch. They weren't going to camp there, and they had a little friend, a little chipmunk that they were feeding. I thought that was pretty funny. And then my son and I went out to check out Lone Rock. We're looking at that. We came back in, and another couple just came off the trail from the opposite direction that we were coming, and they had asked if we were going to camp there, and we said yes. And there was actually 2 spots there, 2 fire rings, and so they took one and we took the other. And then at that point, it really opened up. The rain just started coming down. And so we decided that we needed to set up the tent pretty quickly. So my son and I put our stuff down, put the tent down, got the poles in, got it set up, put the rain fly on it, click, click, click. We got it done really fast, just really efficiently. We didn't really have to say anything. We knew what the other was going to do. And so we're standing there. And we noticed that the couple that was going to camp next door, who was just a fine couple, by the way, Brandon and Melanie from Wausau, Wisconsin. He's an electrician, and she's a new stay-at-home mom. Not a new mom, but she's newly staying at home. They were a great pair of human beings. We noticed that they were just sort of trying to decide where they're going to set their tent up still. And then my son asked me, do you think we can start a fire? And the question wasn't so much, do I think that we can? It was more like, I think that we can, let's do it. You see, Alex has always been my fire expert. Ever since he was a Boy Scout, he has been the kid that knew exactly what to do. He knew the materials to gather. He knew the way to set it up. He knew to get it going. He has always been the guy to go to for campfires. Now, to take it to another level, this spring, he and I took a class from this group of the coolest outdoorsmen that you'll ever meet. It's a group of guys and ladies that they're a nonprofit, and they teach outdoor skills, and they go on expeditions, and they train people for leadership, and they train people for survival, and they train people for just having the confidence and skills to do things outdoors. It's called Fortune Bay Expedition Team. And you should look them up online because they are the coolest outdoors people you will ever meet. Anyway, we went to one of their classes, and we learned another skill. We learned how to get a fire going pretty efficiently with a flint and steel. And so my son and I, have quite a high level of confidence in our fire making ability. So when Alex said, "Do you think we can make a fire?" It was almost like an invitation to do something difficult just to see if we can. And like, can we start a fire? Let's go. And so we went straight to the task. We went out collecting the things, the materials that we needed from the surrounding forest. It was only a few moments later that we had everything that we needed. I went ahead and stood back and let Alex take charge of that process, and he got it going. And we had a pretty decent fire going, and we looked over at our neighbors, and they were still setting up their tent. Not to say that they were unprepared, because they were very skilled themselves. They just, weren't as expeditious, I guess. Because it wasn't too much longer that they got a fire going, and they actually collected quite a bit more wood, and they had a big old fire going, but, we didn't really need a big fire. But then they invited us over to theirs, and we were able to dry off. So it was pretty nice, and they were really decent and good people, and we had good conversation with them. It's really the only people that we had any kind of contact with while we're on the trail. But the point is, we sat at the foot of a master, Alex and I, when we learned that skill of fire building. But that was built upon different teachers we had. When Alex had Brian as a scoutmaster, he learned from him. And when he was younger, and we would build fires, and we would go over to his grandpa's house, and they'd have fires there. Alex took all these pieces of information in and made it a priority skill for himself, so that when the time came when we were on a trail in northwestern Michigan, about as far as you can go and still be in Michigan, and it was raining hard, and he wanted to build a fire just to see if he could, and he did it. There's few things more satisfying than knowing that you have what it takes to get a job done. Knowing that you have what it takes to be effective. And it took us being out in a difficult situation that we put ourselves in on purpose to test ourselves, to know that he can do it. And now if he gets that position next summer, he knows that if he needs to build a fire in the just the worst of conditions, that he's going to be able to do it. Jesus, of course, is our ultimate master. When we sit at the feet of Jesus and we pay attention and we're obedient, and we take those skills and we put them into action, and we put ourselves in situations where we might not be comfortable, but we're forced to see if those things that Jesus taught us are true, then we'll have the confidence to know that indeed we are being equipped to be his disciples, that indeed we are equipped to be the people to share the good news about Jesus Christ. But we have to put ourselves in the situation. We have to be able to be willing to do what he tells us to do. Jesus was telling his disciples about this. He was telling them what he was going to have to put himself in to show that he was capable. He was going to go, and he was going to lose his life. And he was said that 3 days later he would take it up again. But his right-hand man, his best disciple, his number one guy, Peter, was not thinking in terms of sitting and listening and learning from the master. He was thinking in terms of being a chief of staff, of directing the chief executive and making sure that he does prudent decisions. And he said, no, this can't be. Let this never happen. Well, that wasn't part of the plan to be safe. Jesus said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan, because your mind is set on human things and not divine things." See, when we set our mind on human things, we work on staying comfortable. We work on staying within the boundaries of what we know. We stick with things that are safe, things that we've already done, that we know that we can do. But the divine thing, the thing that will bring us to something better, will be when we push beyond those things and we test our skills that Jesus has given us. When we think in terms of human things, we think that this life is all there is. But when we think in terms of divine things, we think that we're heading someplace, that there's something better, that there's something new always being created. When we think of human things, we think of taking, we think of conserving. When we think of divine things, we think of giving, and we think of progressing. When we think of human things, we think of self-protection. And when we think of divine things, we think of self-denial, of self-sacrifice, of giving so that the other may live, so that the other may prosper. And Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. Take up what is going to get you out of that old way of thinking. Take up whatever is going to destroy that notion that you need to stay within your own little circle to be safe. Jesus invites us to sit at his feet, not to sit there and stay there, but to sit there and learn so that we can go and do. But the thing is, we won't go and do it perfectly. Had Alex and I went out 10 years ago and tried this, we probably would not have been prepared. We might have been, I don't know. Maybe our hearts weren't ready yet. Maybe our skill was enough, but maybe we weren't willing to listen to our own inner teacher, our inner wisdom, to say that we can do this. That's what Peter was doing. He wasn't listening, he wasn't learning, and he was saying, no, this must not be, Jesus. Don't go and do this thing. And then when Jesus hears that, he says, get behind me, Satan. But the thing is, he doesn't say, he's not telling Peter to get away from him. He's not telling him that, oh, you failed, you're out. He's saying, fall in behind me and follow me closer. You see, when we go and do, we may not go and do perfectly. In fact, we know we won't. We're going to mess up. And when we do, we go back to the master and we get another lesson. We get another dose of his teaching, another round of his wisdom. And we learn and we go and try again and again. You see, Jesus made sure that his disciples knew the message, that they understood who he was, that they understood that what the mission was, what the purpose is, that everyone is reconciled, that everyone is brought in, that the tent is big enough for everybody. But they need to be invited, that they need to be told the good news, that God loves them, that they're accepted just as they are. There is and always will be those who doubt their own ability. There is and always will be those who are afraid. But let me assure you that there is something better. That when you push beyond what you know, what you find comfortable, what you are confident that you can already do, then you'll find that there is something more for you. But we have to go after it. We have to go for it. Jesus is the one that reaches into the muddy ditch that we're stuck in and pulls us out, not so that we can stand by the ditch, but so that we can go to the next ditch and pull the next person out. Jesus said those who want to save their lives will lose it, but those who lose their lives for Jesus' sake will find it. What does it mean to lose your life for Jesus' sake? It's being obedient to his commands. It's understanding what he was about, that he wasn't about judgment. He wasn't about division. He was about bringing people in. He was about finding the outcasts and making them part of the community. He was about healing and restoring and forgiving and bringing us all under one tent. So when we lose ourselves, when we lose our sense of who we are, when we lose our notion of keeping ourselves safe for the sake of that mission of bringing everyone in, well, then our life takes on new meaning, and being obedient to Jesus in that way, well, that doesn't disappoint. See, when you hold on tight to things that are impermanent, things that will not matter in 1 or 10 or 100 years, well, then the only thing you do is suffer and cause suffering. Because when you hold on to things that are impermanent, they're definitely going to go away at some point. They're definitely not going to matter at some point. And if you've staked your claim on something that is impermanent, then you have nothing to stand on. But if you go deeper than the political figure that you support, and you find that maybe you agree with the party that person belongs with, but that's still impermanent. But if you go even deeper than that, what is the thing that you believe in? What's the principle? What's the foundational piece behind your party's platform that you believe in? That's getting closer, but that's still not it. What's the thing behind that? And the thing behind that is eternal principles. It's the eternal love of Jesus Christ, and that's what we're all looking for. That's the thing that we all need to get to. And if that's not where you're standing on, if those aren't your ideals, then you're missing something. You're missing love, You're missing the need for reconciliation. You're missing the need for restoration because you're missing the story of what it's all about this working for a better life together. You see, we're gonna mess this up. We're gonna try and make this a better world, and we're gonna argue and we're gonna fight, and it's not gonna work out all the time, but it is going someplace. And don't worry that you're gonna get it wrong, because you are gonna get it wrong. But don't worry, because there's nothing that you can do that can stop this convergence, that can stop this expansion of God's kingdom. But the question is, and the question always is, am I really a part of where this world is going, or am I working against it? A good way to tell is, are your actions contributing to healing and forgiving? Are your actions challenging oppressors or enabling oppressors? Are you feeding people? Are you embracing people? Or are you denying people, and are you pushing people away? Are you restoring community, or are you breaking community apart? These are things that are important. These are the things that Jesus worked for. These are the things that should guide our actions. And so when Jesus told Peter, "Get behind me," we can insert our own name in that. John, get behind me. We all need to sit at the feet of a master, whether it's someone who can teach you how to build a campfire, or if it's someone who can teach you to run your business well, or someone that can teach you to knit, or whatever it is your thing. That those things are great, and you can use those things to make your life better. But beyond that, are you sitting at the feet of the Master, Jesus? To me, that's the key. You see, Jesus gives us this requirement of getting in the game. In fact, if we want to be his disciple, we have to get in the game. And getting in the game means what he said when he said, "Take up your cross and follow me." If anyone wants to be my disciples, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. So how's it with you today? How can you deny that part of yourself that wants to hold on and think small and think within your circle? That's the part that needs to be denied. What's it going to take to get you to move outside of your circle, to try the new thing, to push yourself, to be obedient to Christ, to work toward healing and loving and forgiveness and restoration? There's a lot in this world right now in the news where you can put your effort, where you can put your time. That it might seem that your one piece won't make a difference, but it'll make a difference to your soul. It'll make a difference to the person standing next to you. It'll make a difference to the one that's oppressed and sees you. You may not ever know it. You may never know the impact that you've had, but we're called to make the impact. We're called to do it regardless of the reward or the difficulty that may come. That's all I have for this week. Talk to you next time.